Can a nerd from NASA help you build a $100 million revenue stream? I think he can. So you better pay attention to today's episode of This Week in Sales. Hello and welcome to today's episode of This Week in Sales. I'm Kevin Gaither, the CEO and founder of Inside Sales Recruiting. You know, you may recall our goal here is to help sales professionals with tips, tactics, and techniques to improve your performance right now. Today's guest is Aaron Ross, the CEO of Pebblestorm and the author of the new book, Predictable Revenue. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Really a great pleasure to be here.
Aaron, what is your nightmare sales job?
My nightmare sales job. Actually, the nightmare sales job that I had was CEO of my first internet company. This is back in 99-2000, where we had an idea called Lease Exchange, an online equipment leasing marketplace. Raised millions of dollars in venture capital, hired a VP of sales and a team of salespeople, 5 or 10 or 12. And the nightmare was, we had a product, we had some customers go after, and people were calling, and there's just the trickle. It was a trickle of results. Right? We're spending God knows how much money, this much money, and we're getting that much results, and didn't know what to do about it. And actually, that nightmare job was one of the reasons that led ultimately to me writing this book.
Very good. Well, so now that we know what's your nightmare job and what you don't like to do or wouldn't like to do, let's talk a little bit more about what you do like to do.
Yeah, I love coaching and teaching. I love writing. I love motorcycling. I love shooting guns. And I really do love helping companies understand. It's like helping my past self, that CEO who had a great vision and a lot of passion for what I was doing and great people, but no clue or a very small clue as to how to build a sales organization that could really create revenue, especially predictable revenue.
Well, good. Well, good. I can't wait to get into that. Let me give you a little bit of an intro here. So you literally were a programmer at NASA when you were in high school, right? Mm-hmm. Up in Northern California.
Yep.
You're also the founder of Pebblestorm, which is helping 100 million people make money through enjoyment by combining happiness and money. You're also the author of other books, including CEO Flow, Turn Your Employees into Mini CEOs, which helps leaders free up their time and energy by turning their employees into mini CEOs that help them run the business like high-level executives. And as we've mentioned a couple of times, the author of this new book, Predictable Revenue, Turn Your Business into a Sales Machine, with the $100 million best practices of Salesforce.com, of course available on Amazon.com.
Yep.
I'm absolutely looking forward to having a conversation. So why don't we just go for the throat here?
By the way, I'm also newly married this year and have a new baby daughter coming next February.
Congratulations.
So I think one of the reasons this book and even a lot of these principles are so important is, hey, I want to be able to make money and be successful, provide for my family, but I also want to be able to spend time with them and not have to feel like, oh, I need to make lots of money first, so I'm going to work 60, 80 hours a week, and then someday, when my family, actually we have 3 kids, someday when they're in junior high school or college, then I'll be able to spend time with them. To me, that's not acceptable. It's like, how can I make money now and be able to relax, enjoy, to be successful and enjoy my family and just life now?
Right. A healthy work-life balance. Well, I think everyone wants that. I would love to know, of course, with that work-life balance on the work side, I'd love to build a $100 million revenue stream as well. So why don't we go for it here? Tell me about your outbound, calling sales process.
Sure. Well, it originated at Salesforce.com. So again, I was CEO of this company. The company ended up failing, went out of business. So $5 million down the drain, so to speak. And I realized, okay, before I started another company, one of the reasons it failed is because I, as CEO, I delegated my understanding of sales to the sales VP, to VP of sales, to the team. I didn't really take responsibility for it, at least understanding, what works and what doesn't. So when sales weren't working, I didn't know what to do. Okay, so went to Salesforce.com. To me, it was like getting an MBA in sales, doing sales there. When I got there, I started actually out on the line answering the 800 line because they didn't have any sales jobs. It's like, well, I don't want to do anything else. I went from being CEO of an internet company to getting $40-something thousand a year, picking up the phone or responding to website leads. But like, I'll get in there and I'll figure it out. The big problem they had was Salesforce, who now is probably a $2 billion something company. They were a lot smaller back then. I started, and there's about 150 people. They were just starting to hire lots of salespeople and expand their field sales force. So hiring lots of salespeople, but they didn't have a lot of leads for all these new salespeople. Right? So there's all these salespeople were starving. Now the process I created, it's like, all right, I still remember thinking, okay, I'm going to sit at this desk. I got support from an executive to take 3 months and figure something out to help create an outbound process. Because what they were trying before wasn't working, cold calling. 0 results. And also hiring outside firms to cold call for them. Like literally 0 results. Not even 10% results, like 0 results. And so, I tried cold call. I first, read a bunch of books. I read Veto this, and I read Solution Selling that, and the Complex, Sale, and I don't, probably Blink and Red Ocean. A lot were really interesting. A lot were, I think they were written in the 1970s, especially all these sales books. It's the same stuff that gets recycled, and I just threw it all away. I'm like, okay, I got to start from scratch. I'm making cold calls. I'm sending some emails, and what I realized after experimenting, and I figured it out, and also I didn't want to just create some leads. I want to be able to create a flow of leads, right? A predictable flow. Because so what if I hit my number, or I or my team hits the number this month, and we just have to scramble again next month? How does that really help? I'm just delaying the problem. So what I realized is that if I use short and sweet emails, and instead of cold calling, okay, I do not believe in cold calling. Instead of cold calling, if I reached out to high-level executives at small or large companies, this works up to General Electric-sized companies, and asked for referrals, then very frequently, say 10% of the time, these C-level executives, CEOs of, again, like a General Electric divisions or VPs of sales or directors of marketing would actually refer me to the right people in their company.
Come on. You're telling me that 10%, you're getting C-level executives that are like saying, oh yeah, I don't even know who you are, and I'm going to refer you on to the appropriate person? Come on.
Yeah, exactly. And again, a 10% response rate from cold emails. What do you think a direct marketing response rate is? Like
1 or 2%?
Or if that even.
Yeah.
So this is over hundreds of thousands of emails. It's been, ranges, it's 9% is like the ultimate average. But 7 to 12, sometimes 20%, depending on certain kinds of templates and so on. But that's the thing, is if I threw away all those old assumptions that I need to write a long email, like really, like what's your problem? Here's our solutions. Here's our case studies. People don't read that stuff. They're busy. Or remember, executives use Blackberries and iPhones now. If it's not short, they're not going to read it. They'll just skip it. So again, throw away some of these assumptions on how it was done, found some stuff that works, short and sweet little Blackberry-sized emails, almost like Twitter-sized emails as a first one. Just using text, no fancy graphics, not trying to sell the person directly, just asking for referrals, being honest and upfront, just really simple and clear without a bunch of jargon. The return on the total cost of ownership and investment of your jargony business is it's like people will really also respect authenticity and honesty and trust and just simplicity.
Right.
And the simpler you make it for someone to respond to a call or an email, the more likely they're going to do that. It's like the longer the email is, the more they have to, wait, I have to read this and think about it, and and then they just delete it or move on.
Right. All right. So cold emails. You're still using a top-down approach, which is something you probably picked up from one of those books.
Start at the top.
Top-down still does work, right? But you weren't selling directly at that level. You were looking for that referral to the other, to the right decision maker or the influencer in that area. But then what?
Yeah. So the whole intention was to build a process, a function within within Salesforce.com that could repeatedly generate high-quality leads for the company, for the salespeople. And in fact, the subtitle of the book, here's the book, the $100 million sales machine number came from just that process in generating those leads, make sure they're highly qualified and passing them on. So it really is a system where, taking from, I think of it in assembly lines. So going back to my NASA engineering programmer days. It's, okay, what are all these steps that lead to the ultimate outcome? So, and to me, it wasn't just revenue or deals, it was what's predictable deals, predictable closed deals. So there's the cold emails. Well, first you have to build your list, right? Who are you going after? Then send some emails to get some initial responses. Anyway, it's a lot more fun, enjoyable if you're doing prospecting. If you start your day with some emails in your inbox from people who are responding to you, it's a lot easier to start your day than staring at a blank screen, being like, all right, who am I going to call today?
No doubt.
Right?
I've been there and I've done that, no doubt. So are you telling me that I should then go hire somebody, $100,000 base, $100,000, variable compensation to hunt for those leads and close those leads and then farm those leads thereafter?
Yeah. So yes, first of all, one of the, what I talk about in the book is one of the fatal mistakes that companies make is they have their salespeople do everything. They're closing, they're prospecting, they're responding to inbounds or leads coming from their website. They might even be handling account management or customer success. Right? They just can't wear that many hats.
I did it. Why is that a fatal mistake? I mean, 20 years I've done that, but why is that a mistake?
Well, exactly, and it can work. But what if you could double your productivity if you start to specialize your sales roles? And that's really what happens is, we actually did an experiment at Salesforce.com where we had some teams mixing roles. We have teams, at first they were one team was just doing outbound leads or prospecting. Another team was just responding to leads coming into the website. Right? And then we combined them so those two teams are now doing both. They have people who are doing outbound prospecting and they're responding to inbound leads. And it was like within 2 weeks or 3 weeks, the productivity dropped by a lot. I mean, it was like a panic mode of, okay, we're getting 30% fewer qualified opportunities per month, and people are confused and they're messing things up. And again, we trained them, so it wasn't like, okay, we need to train them. It was just trying to multitask doesn't work. I think that's it's more commonly accepted now that multitasking is a illusion, and that when you single task and you're focused, when you're really focused, you can accomplish amazing things. So when you specialize salespeople and you can really be experts at what they do, you need to have experts at prospecting. You can't dabble in it. You need to have experts in closing and through sales cycles, and specializing helps them do that. And then going back to, you asked about the steps of the process. One reason the process does go through sending outbound emails, and you get responses, what to do with those. Okay, how do you set up the first calls? Because calling is really important. How do you do qualification calls? There's all these steps, and you really need someone who's focused on that process to create a to create a consistent outcome and predictable revenue, predictable flow of highly qualified leads through it. So they have to be specialized. Right. I mean, they have to be specialized.
All right. No, I think that's wonderful, and I still see this, today, where a lot of those VPs of sales and those CEOs out there, it's hard to think about hiring another sales rep to do account management or another sales rep to do just cold emailing and lead generation, because it just simply looks like cost. And like I said to you, I've been doing it for 20 years that way. Just me, I handle it all. And
I can do it all.
I could do it all, that's right. But I see it time and time again as a best practice with a lot of the fastest growing companies up in Northern California and down here.
Every single one.
Every single one of those specialize in those roles. In fact, you even make a point in your book, Predictable Revenue, not only on the lead gen side, not only do you specialize in the role that's doing the outbound calling to develop those predictable flow of leads, but those that are the inbound leads is also separated out so that there's that specialization even with those leads.
Yep. There's I call it the four core roles. You have to have, as soon as you get enough people, which usually is about 4 salespeople, one function is doing the outbound prospecting, which is separate from the role which is managing the inbound market response reps, sort of getting leads and they're responding to those leads. Mm-hmm. That's separate from the account executives who are closing, and that's separate from the customer success managers or people who are doing account management.
Right. Right. No, I love that. So in that same vein, And this all goes down or comes back to the CEOs and the VPs of sales that I'm talking to right now. In fact, a friend of mine works at a company, and you and I have talked about this before. Work harder and make more calls. They just need to work harder and make more calls. You talk about that in your book. What are your thoughts there?
You know, it's like that's been the rallying cry of sales for, what, 100 years? You know, make more calls, or before the telephone it was, you know, visit more shops, I'm sure, right? You know, knock on more doors, make more calls, do more, do more, do more. Mm-hmm. You know, yes, if you have a ditch digger and he digs ditches for 4 hours, and if he digs for 5 hours, he'll have more ditch. And if you're selling, I don't know, knives door to door, or, you know, I don't know, something that's more of a commodity, because even if you do more in simple non-knowledge worker roles, you can do more. Maybe if you're telemarketing to consumers, for example. But when you're dealing with, especially business to business, and especially these days where everyone's overwhelmed by marketing and sales and advertising, they're just sick of being sold to. So getting bombarded by more stuff doesn't work. It's like you're trying to go break down the gates of a castle by using a bigger battering ram, and meanwhile they're shoring up their gate. So why not dig under the wall? So in this case, going the indirect towards referral emails. But I really do believe that in our whole culture, not just sales, working harder is a crutch for stopping and trying to get at the root of the problem and come up with a better way. It's just easier, especially when we're busy. You know, I was a CEO, and I, at different times, I mean, this is like the 6th company I've done. It's really easy when, especially when you're stressed, to just do. People always do more of what they've done. Salespeople, when they're under the gun, they do more of what they've done before, the more of what's not working. It's really hard to stop and breathe and reflect and take, and I did it at Salesforce.com, 3 months to figure out something that's new and could really create a breakthrough. Right. You know, how many companies, how many CEOs are willing to take someone on their staff and give them 3 months to figure out something new, like a gamble?
Right.
None. 0. So of course, it's like this treadmill, this hamster mill. So to me, my premise is that not only do you get worse results by just trying to turn the thumb screws on people, but you also destroy, you know, it's like, what's the purpose of life? It's the purpose to find fulfillment and happiness and to enjoy what you're doing, enjoy your work and life. And so I think both on the making money side as well as the, well, life is about living side, just trying to work more doesn't make any sense to me.
Right, no doubt. Well, you mentioned this in your book, and I've said this on the show before. You know, sometimes you need to slow down to speed up and stop making those excuses for why you can't do this or you can't do that. Sometimes you just need to sit down and go, wait a second, my sales reps are calling into companies or emailing into companies, and the emails keep bouncing, X%, and you're measuring this, of course. Yeah. These emails are bouncing, as opposed to saying, well, you know what, we just need to put more in the system. Well, no, maybe you need to think about tools that can improve the quality of that list as it exists, or look for other lists and solve that problem, slowing down to speed up. Okay, so we're talking about, first and foremost, we're doing these cold, I love the phrase, Blackberry-sized emails, no cold calls. So we're going to the high-level decision makers to get referrals down. We're then specializing in the specific roles, the lead generation role, either inbound and outbound, then the closing sales roles, the quota-carrying account executives, and then the account managers or client success managers is a phrase there. And then evaluate that process in a dynamic way, slow down to speed up, and evaluate each step of that process and make each one of those better. How's that?
Yeah, yeah. And actually another benefit of specializing is you can start to isolate what's working and what's not, and get in and really see what the issue is and how to solve it. If you have a salesperson who's doing it all, he's prospecting and doing these leads and closing and managing, it's like it's too messy. You can't figure out what the problem is, if there is a problem.
Right. Exactly. Well, good. Let's talk about fatal mistake number 4, and I'm just going to quote it right out of the book. Talent fumbles, hiring, training, incenting.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Well, you see, I really believe fundamentally that, yes, you need sales process and energy. If you really look at the book and you pay attention to it, and especially if you've seen my Unique Genius work, you'll see that I really do believe that you have to take care of your people. you have to believe in your people. You have to be, cultivate a culture, and because they're really what will make you successful. And if the companies, executives that treat their employees like crap, like resources, I don't think you're going to be. It might work this year or next, but they're not going to be here for the long term. Maybe 3 years. At some point, they're going to fail and crash. So, in terms of hiring and training and talent, first of all, how many companies is there any training? Even smaller ones. Right? So there's no training. And yet, when people, it's just sink and swim. I'm from Silicon Valley, right? So especially there, it's this sink or swim culture. We're hiring smart people; they'll figure it out. Yeah, but if you could just take even an hour a day or a couple hours a week to mentor them, to create some sort of training program, it makes a huge difference in, do they ramp up in 12 weeks, or do they ramp up in 6 weeks, or 2 weeks? It makes a huge difference. Also, the idea that when you're looking for people and you're hiring, why not involve your team, whether it's a sales team or executive team? It's, at Salesforce, one thing that really worked, I hired probably about 50 people, give or take, for the team over 3 years or so. And under 5 ended up not working out or failing in some way or form, shape or form. It might have been like 2. And there's some different reasons. For Salesforce obviously attracted great talent, so I had that the benefit of being at Salesforce. Mm-hmm. But we really picky about our people, and I involved the whole sales team in not only who do we want to interview, to talk to, looking at resumes, actually interviewing them, helping define the interview process. It really was a collaborative effort, so that the team had some ownership over it. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't because the culture I created with my team, at least, wasn't a competitive one. It was cooperative. It was like a fun competition sometimes, but not like dog-eat-dog competition. It really was a team where the culture was the salespeople helped each other. It made a huge difference because then they wanted to bring in really good people, so that not only would they enjoy working with them, but they would it'd help everybody win in a way. So I think a lot of the culture that you build creates this attraction effect of do good people want to work at your company? Do you treat people like crap, and do you work them 80 hours a week? Well, you'll get people that want to be treated like crap and work 80 hours a week. Do you treat people well, but expect a lot out of them, but also work with integrity, and you want them to succeed, and they're good people, and clients really love them? You'll attract people like that who want to be there, and fun, hopefully. Right. I think even in the corporate world, a lot more people like this idea of fun, whether you call it enjoyment or fun or play or liking work. Sometimes fun is too far away for people. Like, I don't understand that. Okay, well, how about if you just like your work?
Yeah, you're kind of making me uncomfortable, frankly, in talking about it's got to be fun. I think romper room,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean? And I'm sure you're not weren't building a romper room environment over at Salesforce, of course, right? No. But you also in your book you talk about getting the salespeople involved in building the compensation plan.
That's a great example.
Blew my hair off.
Really? Where'd it go? No, it was wonderful.
I couldn't, seriously, you get the salespeople. I mean, isn't that sort of a conflict of interest? Getting the salespeople involved in building their own compensation plan, right?
I guess, but I'm one of these people who believes in having the inmates help run the asylum. Again, if you're the kind of CEO, really this book is written for CEOs, really, because there's no other book out there that I've ever seen that's written for a CEO around how to build a sales organization. Now, this book is great for VPs of sales and salespeople, but if you're the kind of CEO or sales exec who wants to you just want people to do what you tell them to do, right? I'm sure you're already doing that, right? That's great. That's how business works. More power to you. This book probably isn't for you. If you want to be the kind of sales executive or CEO where you're not the only one doing everything, you actually have people coming to you with ideas and wanting to improve how things work, and wanting to show up on time, and wanting to do well, and wanting to contribute, and wanting to make a difference. That sounds like a lot easier, and not just easier, it's like easier, you can get better results. I mean, there's so many benefits to having this idea of where your employees are these mini CEOs. Well, one way you do that is you involve them in co-creation of whatever you do, everything, as much as you can. So co-creation is you involve them in the creation of, well, what is the comp plan? How should it work? What should be the details, the paperwork, the process? How should people be comped? All the details of it. And what happens is, when you have good people, okay, if you have a company where there's no integrity, and you just have a lot of lying and cheating and politics and drama, hopefully you're not even watching this TV show, right? It won't work for that kinds of companies. And again, this book isn't for you. But if you have some integrity and you have people who really want to make a difference, and they want to be there, and they want to make money, and then by involving them, not only do you get better ideas, but they're going to be more engaged and bought into the whole process. People support what they help create. When your salespeople help create the comp plan, they'll support it. Because not only, let's say, I'll give you a simple example of what that means. Okay, you say you have 10 salespeople, and not everyone will help contribute to it. Let's say 3 are active in helping you sort of shape it, and 2 chime in once in a while, and the rest don't really care. That's cool. Mm-hmm. All right, next, so you hire the next salesperson, the next 5, and they come in and they start bitching and moaning about the comp plan. You've got 10, a whole bunch of people on your team who help create it, who will not only not defend it, but they'll help explain it to the salesperson as to why they came up with it as a team. Of course, you have certain boundaries, like a certain amount of budget, and certain the amount of compensation may be determined by factors. So it's not like salespeople can just pick their own compensation out of thin air, which actually there's some companies who let them do that. There's other more extreme ways you can involve democracy. But you have some boundaries. So at Salesforce, we had, say $90,000 might be the comp, and maybe we had a fixed base, but everything in terms of how often it was paid, and how the variable was determined, and so on. Why not get the salespeople involved? I really tried. They do need leadership, right? So I still had to set the tone at that point, and create. Okay, here's the process. Here's the outcome, and help be a CEO of that process. But I involved them as much as I could. I didn't turn it over to them. We did it together.
Yeah, you said get the inmates involved in running the asylum.
Yeah.
That comes from the old phrase. You don't want to let the inmates run the asylum, right? So you give them those boundaries. In Daniel Pink's book Drive, he talks about how people are motivated. And I don't know about you, Aaron, but I get that question by VPs of sales and CEOs. I need to motivate my reps. How do I motivate my reps? And motivation isn't something that's done to people. In my opinion, and certainly Daniel Pink believes in that. Yep. If you create an environment, and this is the kind of stuff that you were doing at Salesforce.com, you are creating an environment of autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And we talk about mastery, and of course you talk about purpose all the time with your Unique Genius program, right? But mastery, think about somebody who's 3-4 years out of college, and you're getting them involved in creating a compensation plan, and they're learning that skill. That hones in on that mastery.
Oh, that 1 year out of college.
Right, 1 year out of college, but it's mastery.
No, that's true, and I think that's a perfect example of when you specialize in this. I like that mastery, autonomy, and purpose. We took kids out of college or just out, and they might have done maybe like one job, or starter job before they got into the outbound team. But we had early 20s kids calling on VP level, C level executives at Fortune 500 companies. And because of the selection and the training and the autonomy and the process, they were successful almost 100% of the time.
That's fantastic. So let's wrap it up, Aaron.
Sure.
I'd like to leave the audience with 1 or 2 things that you think that salespeople or sales professionals, generally speaking, can do right now in 10 minutes to improve their performance. What do you think?
Okay, that's great. So, here's 2 ideas that come to mind. First is, if you're sending any kind of outbound emails you're sending emails, whether it's through LinkedIn or actual emails to contacts, make sure they're really short. And just get to the point. Don't try to sell with the first email. You're just trying to get a conversation started. It's like picking up the phone and saying, hi. Right? Or having the person say, it's just like an early question, are you interested? Just short and sweet, and if they respond, then you do a little more, and so on. Right? So that's one thing. The second thing is go through this exercise of thinking, all right, if you only have 40 hours a week to work, if you only have 30 hours a week to work, if you only had 10 hours a week to work, what would you do to accomplish your goals? The same goals you have now. Could be to hit your number at a job, it could be to make some amount of money, it could be to, I don't know, find a soulmate, whatever it is. It could be to travel. Stop using more hours as a crutch, as a brute force way to try to get what you want. Challenge yourself. You may not actually work 10 hours a week. Some people might. Stay-at-home moms, I know. But you just go through the mental exercise. It really forces you to drill down, to prioritize and say, okay, I can't do everything. Because you can't do everything. What are the most important things to do? Stop trying to do it all. Do fewer, more important things. So again, like that 10 hours a week kind of exercise, it really helps your mind prioritize it. And stop trying to just do everything. It just is exhausting and it doesn't work. It distracts you from the stuff that really works.
Wonderful. Well, that's so great. So that's all we have for this week. I'd like to thank Aaron Ross for coming on the show. Certainly, if you have any additional questions, feel free to email me at askkevin@thisweekin.com or join our Facebook page, like our Facebook page at This Week in Sales, or tweet at us at Sales Week. And of course, don't forget to go to our YouTube page or subscribe to iTunes. You can go to youtube.com/show/This Week in Sales, or like I said, just go to iTunes and subscribe. Thanks for joining us this week on This Week in Sales.